Hi, everybody. I'm here today with the incredible Rachel Harrison. Rachel is the USA Today bestselling author of So Thirsty, Black Sheep, Such Sharp Teeth, Cackle, and The Return, which was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award for Superior Achievement in a First Novel. Her short fiction has appeared in Guernica, Electric Literature's recommended reading, as an Audible original, and in her debut story collection, Bad Dolls. Welcome, Rachel.
Hey, so good to be here.
I know I kind of barely scratched the surface with that, so please tell me what I missed.
I don't even remember what I do half the time. I do have Play Nice comes out. My next novel comes out September 9th. So I'm excited for that and ramping up for all of that and kind of getting into promo mode for Play
Mhm.
Nice.
Well, how did you first get into writing and why'd you pick horror?
So I've always written stories. I've always been obsessed with stories since I was a kid. Like I remember dictating stories to my mother before I could physically write. But it took me a long time to get into horror because I'm very sensitive and I scare very easily. So when I was little, um, anything could send me into a tailspin, like the cover of a scary movie VHS at the video store would give me nightmares. So I didn't really understand or have a relationship with horror until I was a little bit older. And when I was in college, I had a roommate who was obsessed with horror, and I was a screenwriting major. And my sophomore year, there was a screenwriting contest for a horror screenplay. And that's when I really started to dive into horror and understand that it's actually very cathartic. And sometimes the point isn't to scare you. And if it does scare you, that's a good exercise for your fear. And ever since, I've been swimming in the genre. No going back.
And we're so happy to have you, let me tell you that. Well, what is your writing process like? Are you a plotter, a pantser, love editing, hate editing?
I am more of a pantser. I wish I hate outlines. Don't like an outline, don't like a summary. They're soulless. So if I outline too much, I don't have the fun of discovery and it sort
Mhm.
of takes me out of it. But if I don't outline at all, then I can get like halfway into a book and be like, this isn't going anywhere. So I try and find a happy medium. And my favorite part of working on a book is when I'm alone with it. The minute I give it to somebody else and like start to get feedback, that's when it becomes like work and not just creative fun. So I like editing myself. Like I like in the when I finish a draft and go through and polish it and see what's working and what's not working, and that's really fun for me. But I love my editor; she's a genius. I've been working with her since the beginning, but I just it's it feels like external pressure to be in edits because it's my job, and so it's kind of not like me just frolicking around in my imagination. It's like you're on a deadline and you need to fix this, and so I don't hate it, but it's not as fun as when it's just me alone working
Mhm.
with it.
I totally get that, and I used to kind of play around with plotting, and then I realized, like you said, as soon as I've written the outline, the story feels like dead in the water.
Yes,
Not as fun, and I just don't like it. Mm-mm.
there's no space for like the magic in between where you're like, I kind of know where this is going, but maybe it'll go in a different direction. If I'm just like writing from point A to point B, it feels a little paint by numbers. So some people it
Yes.
works for them, and I'm jealous because um they have more structure in their life. And I'm like type A. So you would think I would love an outline, but in this one a to-do list in this one area of my life does not work.
No, I'm the same way, and I've actually found that the ones that I've plotted needed way more editing than the ones that I pantsed.
Same. Yeah.
Who knows? Well, so you mentioned your next book, which is Play Nice, coming out on September 9th. So can you tell us more about what that is and what inspired you for this one?
Play Nice is the story. I haven't like come up with my like bottle answer yet, so please forgive me for in case this is rambly. Um, Play Nice is about a young woman who uh, is a fashion influencer, stylist who kind of leads this like picture perfect, glamorous life in the city. She's a big personality. She's kind of like sassy and selfish and unbothered. She's the youngest of 3 sisters and, has a great relationship with her dad and her stepmom, but she's been estranged from her mother since she was a child because when she was young, her parents had a really contentious divorce, and her mother moved into a house that she claimed was also home to a demon. And nobody believed her. The court stripped the mother of custody. Um, all of her family claims Alexandra, the mother, was um, an alcoholic and abusive, and there was no demon. It was just an invention of her own mind to kind of excuse her behavior. So now Cleo's an adult and she's sort of moved past this. She was very young when it all happened. So for her sisters, kind of, it's more of a sensitive subject for them. And one day, Cleo gets a call, and her mother, Alexandra, has unexpectedly passed away. And Cleo comes to learn that the supposedly possessed house was still in her mother's possession, and she passed it on to her daughters. Um, and the sisters want nothing to do with it. They never want to go back there. It has a lot of bad memories. They want to sell it. But Cleo is like, well, what if I flip it? She's like watched one too many of those like Instagram makeover reels where it's like, this took 2 seconds and they made the kitchen amazing. And so she like loves to make things pretty. That's kind of her coping mechanism. And so she goes to back to the house, and when she's there, she finds a copy of her mother's book. Her mother wrote an Amityville horror style book about her time in the house, and this copy of the book was annotated by her mother for Cleo, and she swore to her family she would never read this book. But in light of recent circumstances, she cracks it open, and the more she reads and the more time she spends in the house, she begins to question the narrative that she's always been told by her family, that her mother was just crazy, and obviously there's no such thing as demons. Um, and it's about perception and memory, and about how, like usually in a haunted house trope or a possession trope, the woman is just crazy, and it's really frustrating. And I kind of wanted to deconstruct that, um, and talk about all the ways that when women in particular, no longer want to play by society's rules, how they are dismissed and the ways that they're dismissed and their narratives are twisted. Um, and this book was by heavily inspired by the Amityville horror, which I always found very interesting because there's so many layers to that story. There's the real life tragedy of what happened to the DeFeos, and then the Lutz family comes in and adds a layer on top of that, and then you have the Warrens, who are pieces of shit, come in and manipulate it, and then the book that's written about it, and then the movies and the reboots and all of that, those layers on top of something that was a genuine tragedy. And I also always wondered about the Lutz children, because it's kind of messed up to have, do they believe the narrative that their parents made up, that the house was haunted? And or do they know that it was a lie? Were they told it was a lie? And if not, how would that affect them as children? And how would it affect their lives growing up? I always just was really interested in that. So I was thinking a lot about that. Um, Hamlet, the classic tale of the ghost kind of coming in and of a parent and saying like something is afoot, and that kind of like plot device. Um, and also I grew up in the early aughts, and I was a girl in the 90s and a teen in the 2000s. And thinking a lot about like Perez Hilton and what the media did to Britney Spears and all of that stuff, and just how much people hate women. Like women are just hated, the vitriol. Even now, you go on anybody like any famous woman's Instagram and scroll through the comments, and it's just astonishing. And I really kind of wanted to confront that in this book, you know, to again within that haunted house, like, oh, a woman's just crazy. I wanted to bring that like real life demonization of women who are just like living their life and trying to figure it out, and the like that haunted house, that specific aspect of the haunted house trope. So that's my long-winded answer to that question.
I mean, that was great. I mean, I already wanted to read it, but now I really wanna read it. So, also, the Amityville Horror was one of the few books that actually scared me, and I'm hard to scare. So,
That book
yeah,
is nuts. Every chapter ends with an exclamation point.
yes. Well, also, when I read it, I did not know that it was a hoax.
Oh, okay.
I was like, "Oh, is this real?" I mean, I'm a ghost believer. I know not everybody is, so I was thinking,
I
"Oh
believe in
god."
ghosts too, yeah.
Okay, because some
But
people I talk to, they're like, "Absolutely not, no."
no, I'm very open to that, but I think I read the book in a different context because I kind of knew the layers of it. Um, but it's just crazy the amount of like they went with everything. They were like the
Mhm,
flies and the priest and the blood devil. Like they covered all the bases. It wasn't
mhm.
just like the one thing. So yeah, I love that book. I think it's bananas. I think it's nuts.
Absolutely. Well, I love that horror as a genre can like carry so much of that emotional weight, and especially how you can kind of breathe new life into a lot of these classic horror scenarios. I mean, you've got the haunted house, you've got werewolves, you've got vampires. So when you're thinking about some of these kind of horror stalwarts that have a really deep history, how do you approach creating something fresh and new with this kind of material?
So I don't ever like go into something being like, how can I do a fresh spin on it? Because I think the minute you try and do that, you're already like it's already not fresh. Like I'm a big believer that there's nothing new under the sun.
Mhm,
Um and so like if I'm sitting here trying to be like, well, what can I do that's new? By the time I do it, it's already going to have been done before, or I'm going to like
mhm,
figure out that somebody did it in the 70s and like so I think there's a lot of universal in the specific. So my approach to writing a novel, I have to have two things have to come to me in tandem, which is like what's interesting to me that I want to explore, and what's the right avenue to do that. So, um, a simple one is So Thirsty, where I was looking in a mirror one day, kind of nitpicking my reflection and just being like, I've been doing this for years. And I did this when I was a teenager with like zits. And now I'm doing it as an adult with like, oh my God, is that a line on my forehead? And like, it's exhausting. And like, I hate the mirror. I hate my reflection. It's taking so much of my life. And then I thought about like, what if I couldn't see my reflection? And I was like, well, vampires can't see their reflection. And I just was thinking about aging as a woman in the context of and vampirism. Like when you turn into a vampire, you no longer age. But there's a whole other slew of problems. And why do we as a society frame aging as a bad thing and like put all of this pressure on women in particular that aging is terrible? And what's the alternative to aging? You die or or you turn into a vampire. So that was kind of like an interesting in to the vampire trope.
mhm,
Um and it just kind of came naturally to like those the thought came naturally. I wasn't like I'm going to write a vampire book. It was
mhm,
this is something that's very compelling to me and I feel deeply about,
mhm,
and vampires make sense as a vehicle to explore that. And then it ended up being about the cool thing about any of these tropes is they always like surprise me and the metaphor kind of opens up. And writing about vampires, it became more than just aging. It became about life and what does it mean to really live, and
mhm.
you know what's the difference between breathing and like being alive like living. um And another thing that surprised me about the vampire trope is the idea of want and desire. Um, because vampires, when I was writing it, I had the idea to call it So Thirsty because I thought I was being clever. And my editor said, again, shout out to my genius editor, was like, you can't write a vampire book called So Thirsty and have it not be a little bit sexy. Like people are going to expect it to be sexy. And so when I started to kind of explore that element, I thought about how vampires and their relationships to want, and like mortal women and their relationship to want, and how we're taught to want less or be smaller, or um, that our desires are shameful. And vampires are often thought of as like hedonistic and that kind of relationship. So um, I think in terms of making it fresh, it's just really me exploring things that are specifically interesting to me in my experience of being alive. And I think there's always something that people relate to in that. If you're vulnerable and speak authentically about your experience, other people are going to relate to it. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, that's generally my approach.
I totally agree. I mean, if you care about it, we care about it. Like, that
Yeah,
comes through in the writing, for sure. And speaking of that, you have a very distinctive voice in your books. I feel like I would know you wrote something even if I didn't see your name on the cover. So, how did you go about, like, finding and cultivating that voice?
I think it's interesting. I It was a lot of just I don't think too much about it. I think again, like when you go into something and you're thinking like, how do I find my voice? Then it puts this pressure on it. I
Mhm,
think the most important thing is to just follow the fun and follow what feels natural and what you enjoy doing. Um, and for me, like, I wrote in different tenses, different like third person, and I found that I like first person the best. Like that's the most fun and comfortable for me. So I did that. And I didn't feel like pressure to be like, oh, but like people like third, like, no, do what you feel most comfortable doing. And then in terms of voice, like I I like character studies, character driven. Um, like that's fun for me to like get into the head of a character and stay there and explore the story through their eyes. So I did that, and um, writing genre fiction. The first time I wrote kind of like a genre mashup story, I was like, oh, this feels comfortable and fun. So I think the best way to find your voice is to just experiment and find what you like the best, what's the most fun for you, not what people say is the right thing to do, or like
mm.
even your favorite writer, maybe your voice is different, maybe you do different things. Like so um whatever just feels the most comfortable and the most fun, I think, is the best way to find your voice. I mean, that it worked for me. So
Yeah.
it's worth trying, I think.
I mean, I feel the same way. I experimented so much in the beginning, and I feel like the things I started writing sound nothing like what I'm writing now.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. You wanna see
Yes.
that evolution, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, several of your books, we've kind of talked about this before, feature, strong female friendships, strong female characters, which is very refreshing. What kind of other themes and overarching messages do you think your books convey?
I write a lot about shame, which is like something that I notice, but like rarely gets pointed out to me. I think because it's quieter on the page. But I write a lot about like the things that I think I was, again, a girl in the '90s. I think shame was just like such a part of my upbringing. Um, so, um, like in The Return, there's a lot of shame and insecurity about your life not being where you thought it was going to be, or things not looking the way like you thought it was going to look like, and not having as much money as your friends, or not being in a stable place, that like comparison, or like shame over a friendship breakup. So that was The Return. And in Cackle, Annie goes through an actual breakup and the shame around being dumped and feeling like insecure about yourself. And then in Such Sharp Teeth, a lot of shame around body trauma
Mm,
around assault, around anger, is the big one. And then in Black Sheep, shame around family, like your family not being, I think people judge people for not having perfect families, and there's always like kind of shame and suspicion around that, and not feeling like you fit in the world if you don't fit in with your family, and shame around religion, and religious trauma brings a lot of shame. And in So Thirsty, shame around desire and want, um, and in Play Nice, shame around I think the perception around the pressures of appearing a certain way, and what it means to abandon your veneer when it's your protection. And so, kind of getting past that shame of how we're perceived.
mhm.
So, yeah, I think all my work deals a lot with shame. Um, which is a topic we don't really, again, we're too ashamed to talk about what we are ashamed of.
Well, that's why it's so important, though. It brings that catharsis you were talking about because
Yeah.
it's talked about. And another question I wanted to ask you is so we all know there are so many subgenres of horror. I mean, cosmic, creature feature, extreme, etc. How would you classify your books?
Ooh, this is hard because I get very touchy around the subject, and the problem is, like, for me, it's not my job as the author to tell
Mhm,
readers what my books are. They can figure it out, but I get very defensive around labels like cozy
mhm,
or pink or even feminist, just because I feel like, in my experience in the past couple of years, it feels like those labels are put on my books to kind of elbow me out of my own genre, or say, like,
mm,
this isn't, like, well, this is a feminist horror book, but,
mm,
like, dudes who are writing books from female perspectives, their books aren't being called feminist. I'm not saying I'm not a feminist. My books are feminist, but like, why is that in front of,
mm,
like, why are you putting that there?
mhm.
Um, it's just a horror book. Um, it's not, and, like, again, I think pink horror, it's like, yeah, my covers are pink, but it feels like, well, this is girl, or like girly pop horror or whatever. Like, I don't know, catch me. It depends on the day you catch me on. Sometimes I'm like, yay, fun. And sometimes I'm like, no, but like I'm talking about real shit here. Like,
Mhm,
it feels like it's a way to kind of lessen or dismiss the
mhm.
importance of what I'm writing about.
Yeah,
And and I think that, like, that grates on me a little bit. So, like, I very much am like, just call me a horror author. And, like, with Cackle, I get it, it's a little cozy, but, like, I think the rest of my books, like, when people call, um, Such Sharp Teeth cozy, I'm like, it's about sexual assault, and, like, does it, like, like, I think, um, I I put a lot on the page, and, uh, I think sometimes I get a little bit sensitive about that stuff getting glossed over,
sure.
um, and I think there's a difference between cozy and relatable, um,
Mhm.
so I don't know. That's a, like, again, that's a sensitive situation for me. And yeah, I mean, readers, they're allowed to call my work whatever they want to call it, but for me personally, I'm just like, I write horror, and that's it.
I get that. I mean, such sharp teeth, not cozy. I mean, I loved your descriptions of actually the physical transformation. I've never read anything like that, and I was like, yes, I love body horror, so I was so there for
Well,
that.
thank you. And even, like, people call Black Sheep cozy, I'm like, there's cannibalism in that. Like, there's straight up cannibalism in that book, and, like, I don't. Again, I think maybe it's like, um, if it feels comforting to read, people call it cozy. But I also, I'm also, I feel a little bit like, um, it just, sometimes I'm like, are you saying that about my work just because, like, I'm a girl and I post smiley cute pics like on Instagram. Like I don't know, like so
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to have to do that. It almost feels more like a marketing thing than something that's actually useful in any way.
yeah, I mean my publishers doesn't don't like call it cozy. But I just, if somebody genuinely feels that way, they're allowed to feel how they feel. But for me, it's like, um, I don't know. I fucking turn myself inside out and put my heart in every single one of these books and like have to be so vulnerable. And
Mhm.
so, you know, it's, it just to be, have someone be like, it's cute, it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just, so,
Well, you do
but
make characters that people like I feel in the character's head, it feels relatable, and maybe that's what people mean by cozy is like they wanna live in your characters' heads, which is a good thing.
good, I don't. Usually the couple months is enough, and I'm like,
Gotcha.
"Bye. Good luck."
Well, what would you say, like, fuels you in general to write these stories?
I think I kinda just I have to write, or I don't know what to do with myself. I think everybody who writes just feels this compulsion to do it, and, like,
Mhm,
if I like, I wish I loved math. I wish I loved finance. I wish I was, like, um, or just, like, a normal person job and not like a creative, like bleeding heart job. um, but I mean, we have to do it.
mhm,
Um, it's just, I think I need that like emotional catharsis, and it's how I understand the world is by writing stories, and it just it's my coping mechanism. It's
mhm.
fun. Um, And it's also how I pay my bills, so it's a combination of all those.
Well, selfishly, I'm glad you don't love math so you can make books for us, right?
Uh,
Well, you've had a lot of success, a lot of buzz around these books, and you've been able to go on all these really cool national tours. So I would love to know what's it like to go on a book tour?
it's fun, it's wild. My like, my biggest thing is, like, I try and also turn them into vacations and spend time with people, so, like,
Mhm,
2 years ago, I had my best friend Courtney, who's also an author. She wrote a great book called Welcome Home, Caroline Klein. She came with me to, um we went to college in Boston, so we did, like, a road trip up to Boston, and we went to an unlikely story in Plainville and did an event there together, and then I did an event in Boston, so I got to, like, spend time with her and hang out, and then, um last year my mom came on a couple stops with me, and this year my husband's going to come out to LA and Utah with me, so like I try and turn them into vacations too. So it feels, because going by yourself can feel lonely. It's really fun. It's really like crazy. But you're in like a different city. You don't really get to spend too much time in the place in the
mhm,
city because usually it's a new city every night. So if I can turn it into a social thing, if like I know people there, then I will. And if not, it's just like it's the most thrilling thing in the world to like meet readers and to like have that energy. And writing is so solitary that
mhm.
um it's just such a like it's such a switch to be like alone in a room hunched over your computer and then be like there's people, and I'm like I never will understand why people want to come out and see me, but like I try and make it as fun as possible. Um and so that's yeah, it's just wild, it's surreal, and I feel very, very fortunate to get to do it, and I'm just kind of like trying to take advantage of it um, as much as I can and go as many places that I can and meet as many people as I can because life is short, and
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's the best. Very
Awesome.
tiring. I like lots
Yeah.
of liquid IV, lots of hydration, but again, like your adrenaline is so high that like even if I get like 4 hours of sleep, I'm like still wired.
Well, my next question I know is gonna be hard, or maybe not. Which of your books is your favorite and why?
I think Such Sharp Teeth is my favorite.
Mine too.
I think it's just like the book of my heart. Like I've never had a draft pour out of me like that before. Play Nice was like a close second in terms of like easy to draft. But like Such Sharp Teeth, like it's just like every day, like just waking up excited, and like I felt so locked in. And I wrote it during the pandemic, so like there was nothing
Mm,
else. And
mhm.
like I remember one day I wrote like 8,000 words in one day, which is like a record for me, and I'll never make that again. But like I was just so in it. I was so in it. And it was very, very cathartic. And I think that book sort of locked me in to what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. Like, The Return and Cackle are very different from each other, which I think was
Mhm,
necessary because I didn't want to be locked in and every book be the same. So if I
mhm,
wrote a book that was just like The Return after The Return, people would expect every book to be that way.
mhm,
Um, but then Cackle was sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum where it was like whimsical and um like supernatural in like a different way. And so Such Sharp Teeth, I think I kind of like locked into what I felt most comfortable doing. And um, yeah, it was just a really special book to write. And it was, I wrote it in like the fall, and it was just like magical and really, really fun. And like, I just was in bliss writing that book. So very special to me.
So that was an easy question. You do have a favorite child, clearly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I I love all my books. It's again like I love all of them for different reasons. But I think in terms of which one felt really special to me, just the experience of writing that book just like felt very special to me and very close to my heart.
Mhm. Well, my next question is not about books, but
Okay.
I can't help but notice that you have the best fashion sense, like, it's just so
Oh.
awesome. So, how would you describe your personal style? And especially, like, when you're on book tour, how does that reflect your identity as an author?
I love this question. Thank you for asking. I It sort of came about when I was very little. I was a big fashionista. Like when I was a kid, I would love to experiment with fashion. And then as I got older, I think in my 20s, I was like broke all the time and like it was like very like a function thing. And again, during the pandemic, I was just home
Mhm,
and just like and before that I had office jobs. And so around the time like Such Sharp Teeth came out and I started like doing events as an author, it became really fun for me to like think about how to dress. And also like I get nervous meeting new people, and I am kind of anxious in social settings. So but if I can wear something that makes me feel good about myself or that like I feel cool in, then that helps. And so around that time I started experimenting with fashion again. And I would say my personal style is like pretty eclectic. I really love to thrift shop. I like to take risks. I'm pretty girly. Um, and it's also been fun. Like last year with So Thirsty, I kind of was thinking about like vampire theme and like blacks and reds. Because So Thirsty was my first like big book tour. And then coming into Play Nice, like I was thinking about like this book is again like really inspired by my experience as a teenager in the early aughts, like feeling how I felt in at that time in my life, and also how women aren't supposed what they're not supposed to be like. And so for this tour, I have a lot of like pink and like butterfly clips and like
mm,
stuff that's like really funky and inspired by the early aughts. And so it's been really fun to kind of like theme my fashion for each book and book tour. And it's just a really fun way for me to channel my anxious energy about like the social aspect of being an author. and yeah, and it makes me feel good to like put together a fun outfit, and I love to thrift shop. Love a thrift store. So it support this. This feels like a. Uh, I'm like, well, I have to thrift and I have to shop because it's kind of for work.
Totally. No, I feel the same way whenever I do author events, like, my daily life, I'm wearing, like, athletic clothes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "If I can dress up, give me the bright colors, gives me the sequins, give me, like, anything crazy, I will wear it."
Yes, and like people are like, it's funny because people will be like, "You always look so cute," and I'm like, "Not always." Like every day, if you saw me on like a Tuesday, like sweatpants and like the same shirt that I've been wearing for like a week, and it needs to be washed. But like if I'm leaving the house again, because writing is so solitary that
Mhm.
it's nice um to play dress up and have an excuse to like really play dress up.
Yes, absolutely. The main character energy.
Yes, yeah.
That's what we want. Well, so what's next on the horizon for you after Play Nice? Can you give us some hints of what you've got cooking?
Yeah, so the book after Play Nice is called Kiss Slay Replay. It's a time loop horror that takes place at a wedding. And I think that's pretty much all I can say about that. Uh, Hopefully, will be out in the fall of 2026. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, one last question. So I know many authors, myself included, look at your career and think, I want to be like that. That is awesome. So, can you give any advice for aspiring authors who want to have a career like yours?
Um, I don't believe there are anything like there's no such thing as an aspiring author. If you are writing, then you are an author. Um, I I think it's hard because we're all on our own path,
Mm,
and I I think it's really about persistence, and it's really about maintaining the joy of writing
mm,
because that can get lost in trying to um in publishing. Uh and so eyes on your own paper, don't compare yourself to other people. Uh Persistence, joy, it should be fun. Um and then building community, because I don't think I would have been able to continue to write without community, without friends, without, um, you know, I have a lot of writer friends who we talk about stuff and we can relate to each other. And your non-writer friends and family, they can be supportive, but like
mm.
it's just different. It's just different. So
Yeah.
building community is huge. And so yeah, I I think all of those things. And again, like eyes on your own paper, because it can be easy to be like, oh, I want a career like that. But like I remember meeting like one of my heroes and having them and being like, telling like congratulations on something, and them just being like, ah, well, because like we're all writers, like none of us ever reach this pinnacle where we feel like I remember I used to be like, oh, when I get an agent, I'll feel this
Mhm.
way, or when I get a publishing, like there's always something after that.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's going to sustain you is the joy of writing,
Mhm.
your community, and having that drive, being you know not giving up. So um yeah, that's that's my advice.
That's very good advice and very necessary. It's a good reminder for all of us. Well, last question. So, where can people find you and keep up with you and your work?
So I'm most active on Instagram at Rachel Harrison's Ghost, and my website, rachel-harrison.com, and then also my author page on the Penguin Random House site. There's like a little thing that says sign up for author alerts, and they will email you when like a new book goes up to pre-order or when I'm going on tour. So they're a little bit more vigilant than I am. I run my own website, but my events page is up to date. So if you want to come hang out in the fall, maybe I'm coming to you. We should hang out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I really hope you're coming to Savannah one day. We're a spooky city. Please come.
I That's one of my top, like, I would love to come to Savannah.
Mm. That needs
We
to
should
be on
make it
your
happen.
list
Yeah,
order.
yeah.
Yeah, please. We have a vibrant, like, indie bookstore scene here, like, it's awesome.
All right. Well, we'll talk.
Okay.